I'm Wattice Gathings, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this month's Sisters Talking. Each month, Sisters Talking will bring a cross-generational group of Black women together, creating a safe and brave space for honest and vulnerable discussion about the challenges and opportunities, the fears and strength of being Black women. The goal of Sisters Talking is to amplify and explore the lived experience of Black women, the pain, the joy, success, failure, and the resulting pathways for self-discovery. Over the next several months, 7 incredible Black women will join me on this film journey of conversation and community, self-awareness, and self-actualization. DeAndre Anderson, Chief Operating Officer. Mary Morton, CEO. Dee Atkins, Chief of Community Engagement. Dr. Suzette McKinney, Life Sciences and Real Estate Executive. Ariel Johnson, Business Owner. Victoria Rudd, Senior Community Affairs Manager. And last but certainly not least, Nidra Sims-Fears, Nonprofit Executive. Ladies, let's continue this journey together. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So good to be with you all today.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman.
And I'm Gregory Smith.
On the next Petty and Profound, we're examining how the recent awards season exposed hidden truths about the hidden war for teenage boys' minds.
We'll break down how celebrating female empowerment and ignoring male radicalization isn't just ironic, it's dangerous.
Tune in Wednesday at 7 p.m. on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app.
Elevated conversations and storytelling, experience the power of community television.
On the next episode of Chicago Newsroom 2.0, host Andy Zopp and guest co-host Deborah Witzberg examine the latest developments on the government shutdown and federal troop deployment in Chicago. Plus, exploring how art and activism intersect through comics, theater, and Chicago's creative economy. Tune in Thursday, October 16th at 7 p.m. Watch it on CAN-TV 19, cantv.org, or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television. When you commit to authentic voices, when you trust powerful stories, recognition follows. 2 Emmy nominations, the first in our history. Stream the Emmy-nominated programs now on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. CAN-TV. Experience the power of community television.
Right now, funding cuts and cord cutting threaten the future of local media. But Chicago cannot afford to lose its only platform where every voice is heard. Since 1983, CAN-TV has given everyday Chicagoans unfiltered access to tell their stories, hold leaders accountable, and keep democracy alive at the local level. But we simply cannot continue without your help. Consider making a financial gift today, because if we lose local voices, we lose Chicago.
With the dust settled and the long, exhausting arc of the 2024 presidential election finally behind us, a powerful movement is emerging. One rooted not in retreat, but in restoration. Black women who turned out in unprecedented numbers, over 91% of eligible Black women cast their ballots, now signal a need to pause, heal, reflect, and preserve their peace. This is not an act of surrender, it's resistance. It's reclaiming power through rest. Experts and advocates note, after tending to rights, communities, and democracies, Black women are choosing to step back, not to abandon the fight, but to fortify themselves for what lies ahead. It's time to rest, writes one commentator, to recharge until hope feels more tangible. Elections take a profound emotional and psychological toll on women. Research shows that women report higher levels of stress, anxiety, and fears in days following the campaign, and that toll has only intensified for Black women who often bear the brunt of society's demand while navigating systematic inequities. And for many Black women, rest is more than just self-care. It's a political act. As an assistant professor recently described, it's a way to process relentless, demeaning rhetoric, to reclaim dignity, and to protect the emotional body against a country that has often shown indifference to our well-being. This month, we dig into the stakes of rest as resistance and ask, how might this moment of pause reshape the roadmap of activism in the years ahead? Sisters, let's get into it. Wow. This is going to be a very interesting topic. So maybe we could just start by level setting and acknowledging, right? We went through a election cycle, 107 days, where we supported a sister that looked just like us. And while I know many of you guys have been through tumultuous election cycles, I think this one felt a lot different considering what was at stake. After this election season has ended, I'm curious to know what went into it for each of you guys emotionally, and how have you started to recover? Dee, let's start with you.
Sure. I loved to see, especially my sisters, rallying behind a Black woman, hoping to see the first Black female president of the United States. And some of us at this table were in similar spaces, and the work was morning, noon, night, parties, fundraisers, just a lot of events that were hopefully leading up to a positive outcome. And I really can't express the joy and the pride that I felt as a Black woman that we would come together, and also that there were a lot of white people that seemed to rally alongside us in that effort. And then came the election and then the defeat. And personally, it let the wind out of my sail. And it was immediate rest for me, because I'd spent so much time and effort. I had no more to give. And so I did not have a choice. It was just like, boom, you need to stop. And that's what I did. And so since then, that's kind of what rest has looked like for me. But I loved to see how we came together. I will also add, though, that during that time, when the statistics came out that 92% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris and 47% of white women did, it infuriated me, because there were so many white women that I thought were with us in this effort, and the studies and statistics showed otherwise. And so it's kind of like, you know what, find somebody else to do it, because I'm doing what I need to do. I'm taking my rest. And so again, it was an act of resistance, because you should have been supporting this in the same way that we were, and that's not what happened. So
Wow.
That's what rest looked like.
So much to unpack there. Doctor?
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything that Dee said, but I felt like it was almost like a slap in the face, because the level of camaraderie, not just among Black women, but among Black women and white women and Asian women and women of all races and ethnicities, the way that we collectively came together to rally behind a candidate that was both female, Black, and Asian American was really incredible. And so I heard that same statistic, that only 47% of white women voted for her. And it just made me feel like, so what was all the discussion and the coming together? Was that all just a farce? You know, and I agree. It also took the wind out of my sails. And to be a Black woman in the country that really has never treated Black women with dignity and respect, leading up to election night, I thought, finally, women, not just Black women, but all women will get some of the credit that they deserve. Women will have an opportunity to do something great and really help our country in a big way. And to have so many women go into the voting booth and do the exact opposite of what they had been saying they were going to do felt like a slap in the face. And I immediately said, okay, I'm done. If you all don't want change in this country, then deal with the consequences. And interestingly, the side effects or the after effects of that election decision started showing up. And all of a sudden, I'm getting emails and I'm getting text messages, please help this. And we didn't know that this is what this would mean. And my response was delete and report as junk. Done. Don't call me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
Understood. I think this is enough to unpack for us all to weigh in on. Nidra, how was your experience?
Identical. And don't ask me for money. Don't ask me for support. And you just have to move on. I have an identical twin, and she studies Black women in leadership. And that the duality between being a woman and being Black, and it has to, in order to advance how people see us, they have to embrace that we are both Black, in Kamala's case, I'm sure, being Asian, and then being female. And it is, and obviously you can see the dissidence, right? That they said that they would support a Black woman, but in the reality, it did not happen. And given the history of this culture, of this country, and how it's not surprising. Because I think the rhetoric and the reality are two different things, because we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who has benefited the most from diversity, equity, and inclusion? White women.
There it is.
The rhetoric is that we have benefited, but the reality is white women have benefited. And at the end of the day, it just appears that they, if faced with supporting someone of the same sex and supporting someone of the same race, it seems like race won.
Wow. DeAndre?
Yeah.
This was a very emotional situation for me. I actually was on that call in July. I actually had the audacity of hope. I actually believe that she was truly the most qualified person to probably run for president in our lifetime.
No doubt.
And I really believed that it was possible for her to be president, and it wasn't just about her being a Black woman, it was about her truly being a qualified candidate. And as a result, I worked a lot. My team was honored to have participated and provided services for the Democratic National Convention, which drew me in even closer. And I really fundamentally believed that our country was smart and would make a choice that needed to be made at that time. And I can only sum it up as feeling completely betrayed.
Wow.
I feel betrayed. It's a feeling to have that much emotional baggage in that situation just left me feeling betrayed and having to rethink, what is my role here? Because I did exhaust myself, and now I have to rethink that I'm not going to be defined by my exhaustion anymore.
Wow. Tori?
Yeah. I share the same sentiment with all of you. I think though the journey to rest has been hard, I greatly welcome it now. It's been a bit rewarding to kind of sit back and watch the child touch the stove in a way, in a very did we not see this coming? I told you so. So in that sense, it has been very hey, not my monkey, not my circus. Condolences, especially to what has been going on lately, but I mean, you said it earlier, it's when the chickens come home to roost. So my rest is that is you, and we are over here.
They say television is about sitting back. We say it's about stepping up. Your block has stories worth telling. Your neighbors have voices worth hearing. Chicago has a heartbeat worth sharing. Stop watching their world. Start showing yours. It's time to tune in and be seen. Can TV, always here, always yours. Experience the power of community television.
Right now, funding cuts and cord cutting threaten the future of local media. But Chicago cannot afford to lose its only platform where every voice is heard. Since 1983, Can TV has given everyday Chicagoans unfiltered access to tell their stories, hold leaders accountable, and keep democracy alive at the local level. But we simply cannot continue without your help. Consider making a financial gift today. Because if we lose local voices, we lose Chicago.
We have so much to talk about as we lay down this topic, and I think that oftentimes when we lost the election, because I feel like clearly it was a loss for us all as women, especially African American women, and we were standing and we thought that groups, particularly women, that it was in their vested interest to stand with us, did not stand with us. It was hurtful. And I remember days leading after that, it was clear that women were going to take their West Black women in particular, but it wasn't well received by all. What was the reaction in your circles when you weren't quick to jump on committees and projects and initiatives, and how the people, I remember someone directly saying to me that that's not the way to solve this problem, right? And trying to reenact my agency back into the process, but I get to choose how I want to rest. So curious on what was the reaction from your networks and your communities as you decided to take a step back and focus on your own mental health and take care of yourself?
They didn't recognize who we were, in my opinion, because people are so used to watching us grind and do our magic that when we started saying no or stopped showing up, now they wonder what's wrong. And what's wrong is that we have made some grave mistakes that our children will pay for decades, and that is betrayal.
That's right, Dee.
And on a local level, especially in my own community, after the election, there were these rallies, even in downtown Chicago. Everyone wanted to rally, but in the media, it was sort of like, well, there's a low turnout of Black people at these rallies. And so other folks were wondering where we were. And I think it became apparent to some people that we'd done our part, and now you handle what's left of this. And I did not feel guilty at all, because these were rallies that I typically may have attended, but just because of rest, I wanted to do that. And it also was rewarding for me, because the CEO of my organization and we had a conversation, and he was so interested in how I felt and what I needed and what sort of support could he provide to me in that, and understanding that when I said I am tired, even though he is a white man, he understood what I meant in a way and said, whatever you need, just know that I fully support that. And so, yes, there are some people that don't really understand the pace that I'm working at right now, because it's different from the pace that they have been used to. But it feels so much better. And it also shows me just how much I have been giving. I mean, you don't realize that when you're just in the thick of it and you're so committed to it, that you're doing it and you're doing it and you're doing it, and you don't leave time for strategic planning and creative ideas because you're just spinning in it. And then when you take a moment to breathe, to rest, it makes way for more of that creativity and a time for you to go back in when you're ready, or again at a slower pace. I'll enter, I'll step back, and I'll go back in.
You know, I was talking not long after the election, talking to a friend of mine who is a white woman, and we were just talking about how we each felt about it. And I said, you know, I'm done. I'm going to take a seat and not be involved in politics for a while. And she proceeded to say to me, you know, that's not the solution. And keep in mind, right away, this rhetoric around Black women and how inferior we are and incompetent, all of that had already started up. And I said to her, I understand your point, but here's the difference. I can't take off my Blackness like you can take off a jacket. You know, so you will be able to continue to function in this world and have all of the privilege that you've enjoyed your entire life. Whereas I have to move through the world and be constantly attacked, shamed, ridiculed, you know, condescended, simply because of the way that I look. I said, so Black women have fought the fight for a long time. You got it. Y'all go do it for a little while.
Wow.
Let's see how that works out for you.
Wow. You know, what's interesting about what you said, you know, I had the privilege of being raised by a black woman, and I think my mother is the oldest and the coldest in a lot of different ways. Shout out to my mama. I know she's probably going to watch this, but you know, I always regarded her as a superhero, right? No matter what I needed, she always showed up and she always made it happen. And I think partially one of the things I struggled with as I start to re-enter into the fight is really being selective about what I do and don't do, and also feel like I am not living up to that calling of being all things. And I think that privileges that, you know, I had as somebody who am surrounded by other people. My mother was a pioneer in a lot of ways in some of the things that she did, so she didn't have the option to rest. But I do have that option and that choice. So how do you balance kind of people's expectation? You mentioned the woman who thought you needed to be in the fight, but how do you balance people's expectations and their viewpoint about rest being radical versus who we're supposed to innately be as black women?
I work on managing everybody in my network, my family, my staff, friends and neighbors, and to think of it, instead of me, how can I do it? How can we do it? So that in order to claim rest, you have to, but you still want things done, you have to figure out, how can I get this done through other people? How do I manage up, down, and across the board? And so really being very strategic and letting people know that that old African saying that many hands make for light work. So I need your hands so that the work is light and so that we can all benefit from the rest. I've started, let's watch Nidra work. That is done. Over.
You're not wrong, Auntie Nidra.
I think that's fair. I think that determining what rest actually looks like for you in your personal life, it also kind of makes way for the conversation of who is worth kind of speaking to about whatever topic, because there are some people, you know, like you may not have the mental or emotional or knowledge capacity to even have this political conversation. And if we do have it, it will absolutely kind of weigh on me later on in the night when I'm genuinely trying to rest. So I think for some conversations, it's like, it's not even worth it. I'll just let you have that one, and we can just move on.
Sure. And so that's interesting. You mentioned kind of community and leading into that. When we think about our communities and sisterhood and what we are for each other as black women, how does your community play a role in keeping you accountable to doing that very thing of actually resting, and how do you recharge with one another?
It's critical, because otherwise we're on this cycle of exploitation, and we have to get off of it. And so our community of women, of sisters, of whoever those people are, helps us to understand that this burden is not singular.
Right.
It is a burden for all of us. And you know, to what Nidra's saying, we're going to have to pick our parts and collectively work through this together, but not before we take a break, in order to establish ourselves a moment of mental clarity.
Sure.
I love that, the moment of mental clarity. I mean, as I look around my community, everybody is resting. All the black women in my community are resting. We are traveling, we are learning line dances. I mean, we are doing all of the things. And it's like, with all of the rhetoric that continues to pervade our everyday lives, it's almost as though it has become a mechanism for survival. Just to say, all of those things that I'm hearing, I don't believe those things about myself. I don't believe those things about other black women in my community. Like, we are doing things that are necessary to help us feel good and have some mental capacity to manage the things that we have to manage. Children, family, you know, work responsibilities. But I love that I'm seeing everyone resting.
That's awesome. You know, your statement made me think about, and I was trying to reflect quickly on, what do we do before we have this moment of clarity? So when you think back to a lot of us as women, I think I could speak for myself personally when I was going through tough periods in life and not having the language to understand I needed rest. It was almost walking around functionally depressed. It was getting on the hamster wheel enough to put on the show, to go to work, to drive things crazy, but I wasn't going home at night making myself dinner. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't taking care of myself because every ounce of what I had in me was left on the playground every single day. And so when we think about where we are today, in some ways, I'm really proud of us because I know what it cost us before we got this moment. But let's go back to that moment and think through, like, Tori, you are, one of our younger panelists. What are, millennials and Gen Z doing to rest that was different than what some of us may have done?
Yeah, I think setting boundaries and being very firm in them and expressing them is by far one of the main things that we're doing. I think that, especially in recent times, I think that going to therapy has become more kind of ubiquitous and accepted. And I think that kind of lays a really good, strong foundation for us to start. Like, what is good for me? What is good for me? What is good for me? And I think just in that question and having the ability to then express that and to tell other people what you need is amazing. Now, I do think there are some things that in setting boundaries, what is the cost of that? Because some days it's like, if I'm resting too much, am I missing out on building a community or actually nurturing the community that I have that will then support me? So I think mostly boundaries are absolutely great, but I do think sometimes we need to reflect and see, am I being too strict? Am I kind of cutting myself off from having the relationships in my life that I genuinely need? So I think those questions are necessary.
I'm so proud of this younger generation because rest seems to be part of their survival toolkit. For us, work was the survival toolkit. That's right. And so we kept working and working and working. And so I feel like we raised some great children here because they are deciding what they are willing to do about it. And they're making very good decisions about keeping their space and setting their boundaries. And I'm excited. I'm learning from it too.
Yep. And they're unapologetic about it. That's what's been so remarkable to me because you're right. For us, work was refuge.
Yes.
When things got hard at home or in the neighborhood or in the community, we retreated to work. And this generation is like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm proud about with younger people today is that, for many of us, whatever the community call was, that was the call that we supported. These young people are saying, this is what I believe strongly in this, so this is what I'm going to advocate for. It may be different than the rest of the crowd, but this is what I'm advocating for today. And I think that is a level of using the power of one's voice that we didn't necessarily exercise when we were their age. I think a lot of us are coming to it now, but in our 20s and our 30s, we didn't exercise the power of our voices in that way.
But I was just going to add, I think I hear that, but I also see some unrealistic expectations that I do community development work in a real community. And I will have people apply for a job and they don't want to come to the office. They don't want to be in the community. And it's like, well, the community is real. We don't have a virtual community. We have a real community. And that I need for you to be in the community. I don't know how you're going to have a kumbaya moment when you're always on Zoom. And so I think some of the stuff is good, but some of the stuff is just really kind of like, come on.
Yeah.
And I've had discussions around generational diversity and gaps and all of that. So I do understand what you're saying. And what I really appreciate about the younger generation and what rest looks like for them is that they've given themselves permission. To your point, Suzette, in saying, we were about work, we were. But I don't believe that we gave ourselves permission even to rest, because culturally, what do you mean? What do you mean you're resting? It's about hard work, and everyone wanted to work hard. What that brings to mind for me is there's something called the National Day of Rest. I have no idea when it was created, why, or how. All I know is that it is a day where you take off work or you don't do any work and you just do whatever it is that whatever rest looks like for you. And I was, hell bent on participating in the National Day of Rest. It was on my calendar. I was not available that day. And I was so happy to just gather with my sisters and go to brunch and do whatever we wanted to do for that day. So participating in that was subtle, but still an acknowledgement of how they call it radical. It's not radical, it's just resting. And that's the thing for us to keep in mind, is that rest is not radical. It's necessary. Everybody, the body needs rest and rejuvenation. And so why can't we now give ourselves permission to do that on a regular basis?
I love that. But my question is, why is it that when Black women decide to sit down and take a break, all of a sudden it's radical? When somebody else takes a break, they're just simply taking a break. But when we do it, it's radical.
We're not following the moral majority. That's
please.
the challenge there, the moral majority. So we also know that Black women leads almost every stress-related category. And so when we talk about rest, people want to politicize it or make it seem like we don't have the right to rest. But the reality of it is we carry so much that it's detrimental to our health. What are the consequences of us not resting? What's at stake?
A shorter lifespan.
That's
really what it boils down to. All those things you mentioned equals a shorter lifespan. And the question is, what are you living for and for whom? And if that's the sacrifice that we continue to make, then our children, or whatever those things are, will suffer the consequences.
Wow.
I've actually thought about that question a lot, just in the sense of, why is it that Black women are so stressed about everything and have such high stress levels in almost any situation? And the only answer I've been able to come up with is because we pour our full selves into everything. I honestly don't believe that Black women as a whole know how to do anything partially. Everything is fully, it's overly full, it is like
excellent.
Absolutely, excellent. Absolutely it is. But I think that that's part of the reason why we are so stressed about everything all the time.
Well, from an economic development point of view, Black women get paid, is it 72 cents? It's 66 cents on the dollar compared to a white man. So just think of, you're missing 1/3 of your paycheck. That is why we are stressed.
And doing double the work.
Right, because it doesn't matter whether you are a doctor, a lawyer, a fast food worker, you are missing literally 1/3 of your paycheck. So it means that we can't take vacations or we scale back on vacations. It means that the average person, $300 will put them in a tailspin. They don't have $300, the average Black renter, so that suddenly it becomes, missing something becomes a catastrophic. I remember being at a health club, and they had a attached parking garage, and there was a young woman that misplaced her parking ticket, and the fee for the misplaced parking ticket was $50, and she was sobbing because she didn't have $50. And so I believe the income inequality that we have puts this additional layer, because that missing third, we can't build the generational wealth. We don't have the short-term investments. We don't have that cushion. And that is why we are so stressed. We don't have the resources.
And Nidra, add to that the hundreds of thousands of Black women that are now unemployed.
Right.
With this entire situation, who is impacted percentage-wise the most is us. And that is part of why we keep working and why we carry the stress. But we are going to have to stop and breathe and think, and then respond, which is very difficult for us to do because we're constantly in survival mode.
Yeah. Exactly. You guys mentioned something super interesting. I feel like, even speaking for myself and talking to other women, Nidra, to your point, I've had women tell me that, while I want to rest, while I want to take on less projects, I know I have to do twice as much on my job for me to be seen or for me to be recognized or for me to be acknowledged for the same performance evaluation, et cetera. And I can remember seasons of my own life where, while I wanted to rest so badly, my body just wouldn't let me rest. And I remember, particularly in a point, I got a call from my pastor, who I love and respect, and he said, "How you're doing?" And I told him I was tired. And he's like, "Well, you need to rest." I'm like, "I can't rest." And his response to me was, "Read Psalms 91 every single day. And when you read it, you leave it there and you go to sleep, and I promise you'll sleep like a baby." And so that's been my trick. I think that society has instilled so many core beliefs around not being able to rest. I've really had to anchor the faith and say, "Listen, God, I need you to shut this body down and allow my brain to even physically, turn itself off." I have Black women and friends who can't go to bed at night without a glass of wine or without having an edible or whatever their substance of choice is. And it's because our bodies sometimes don't physically let us rest because we know all of these other things at stake. And so when you think about resting, what are some of the tangible tricks and traits that you guys do to actually allow your body to rest?
I'm the wine. And even then, sometimes my brain won't shut off, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm awake, and I'm going through point A, point B. It's like, shut up, but it won't sometimes.
I find that exercise does help. I'm not sure what it actually does, but when I exercise, I sleep better.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
sometimes it's that phone. You got to put the phone down. Like it's that doom scrolling at night, and it leads, and it's like 3 a.m. and now TikTok is great, but sometimes it's put that phone down, go to sleep.
For me, I think the doom scrolling actually helps me fall asleep because while I am resting from a political perspective, anything that I do, I'm still pouring myself into it.
Sure.
So I'm one of these people that I just run, and go all day. So by the time, it's night and time to shut it down, if my mind is still racing, the doom scroll helps
takes
me.
you away.
It does.
It does.
And my escape has become travel, but more than travel, it's escaping reality. Sometimes I don't watch the news because it's so predictable. I don't want to hear it. And so I'll watch countless reruns of Columbo. I'm aging myself, I know. Columbo and Alfred Hitchcock, just to take myself somewhere else so that I'm at rest. I'm watching my favorite episodes and all that, and I'm where I want to be. And it brings about a sense of peace in me.
Yeah. So if we were able to take these tangible things and made it a norm of expectation versus what we think we get to do as a gift from time to time, how do you think that'll impact us in the way we show up as Black women? What would that mean for our leadership, how we organize, how we support one another, if we were showing up as the rested version of ourselves?
Oh, we will make much better decisions. We will be better leaders. We won't be so agitated. And I think, honestly, we will lead better. And not just with words, it'll be by pure example. It's a very serious thing that could really make a difference.
That's right.
I like that because it's also, you think of the 80-20 rule, right? That 20% of the people do 80% of the work. If 20% of the people who do 80% of the work stop doing the work, then it's got to be more evenly distributed. And you let other people, give them an opportunity to show up and stand up and be part of the solution.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There you go.
So when we think about where we go next with rest, and I think that it's clear that we're all on a political break because the rhetoric and things that we're facing has not stopped. And if anything, over the past few weeks, it's amplified itself a bit. At what point do you think we'll get back in the fight? And what does that look like for us to have the right balance and support?
Well, I think the fight is a little bit different, right? So the kind of fighting and working that we did in that 107 days is very different than the kind of fighting and working that we have to do today.
Sure.
Today, while we have a little bit of time, we have to organize differently and think differently about our strategic approach to what is next for us.
I think a lot still remains to be seen. I mean, it feels like we've been in this current state for a long time. It's only been almost 9 months. So we are about 8 months, 8 3/4 months in, and we still have more than 3 years to go. So I agree with DeAndrea, but I think that time will tell. Because I heard someone say the other day, oh my goodness, so many things have happened, what else? And I just kind of felt like, put on your seatbelt. I don't know that we've seen the half of it. And because we haven't seen the half of it, I'm not sure that we yet know what it looks like when we stop resting and get back into the fight.
Wow, Dee?
Well, I feel like I've been in the fight and I will be in the fight for the rest of my life because of my personal passion. I'm fueled by being a community activist because it's something that I love. And so I'll always do it. It's the way that I do it today. It's the way that I show up. So it's saying no. It's declining some opportunities. It's assessing whether I need to do something or not, and going at that pace. So when I mentioned earlier, I'm going at a different pace, that's what it looks like, because I have so many things coming my way. And sometimes I have fear of missing out, FOMO, like, Suzette's gonna be, I should probably, maybe Suzette's gonna, maybe Watisse is coming. And so it's, if I see pictures and you're in them, then it's like, oh, I know I should have gone. But
she was doom scrolling too.
Yes, I am. I'm notorious. And how does she know? Because we're both doing it. But it's those things sometimes that I have to realize that it's been a myth, that I cannot be everything to everyone. I cannot be everywhere all the time. That you cannot expect to see Dee at every function. And so I've scaled back on what that looks like, but in all honesty, that FOMO still does exist because I want to be so close to community. I really do. And I want to support all of these nonprofits and folks that are, looking to engage. That's really important to me, but my rest is also important. So taking the time to assess what that looks like. And that's sort of the balance, and sometimes honest imbalance that I have even today is with my rest. How much rest am I taking versus opportunity? So I'm out there a lot, but nowhere near how I was maybe near the end of 2024.
That's right. You make a great point, Dr. McKinney, that it's just getting started. Yeah. And we have a long way to go. And I think that, part of what we know, which is why I think that Black women has always carried a moral compass, even when it doesn't best serve us, is because we know that when things go bad in our communities and our neighborhoods, we have to resolve it. So when things get bad for most people, it gets worse for us. And so therefore, we've never had the history of taking our time to rest. So as we think about what's happening on the federal landscape in particular and how those things will likely continue for a few more years. And we're going to have to engage in some level of forms because while it's not necessarily a full target and attack on Black people and Black women, we're impacted by it. And it's going to become more aggressive over time, right? It's small, subtle victories the other sides are trying to experience. And so as we re-engage, what are our thoughts and what do we want our community to know? You talked about Dee, your leader who seems to be very supportive of you and not fully having the same lived experience as you, but as we re-enter, have to join shoulder to shoulder with people who look like us, who don't look like us, some that we may feel betrayed by, some that have exposed their viewpoints in this moment. How do we work together for a common cause, but also how do we make sure as we re-enter, they're able to see and identify our humanity?
Yeah, this is interesting in that we have been hit so hard over the past couple months. It used to be microaggressions, now it's just aggression. And so we have to show up differently. And while we want to voice those things in a way that they can receive them, it doesn't always happen. But I think it's still important to voice them in whatever ways we can. And so we're not always going to be able to meet people where they are in order to gain their support, but to make the effort is all we can do. And from there, sometimes you have to decide that this is just not the right environment for you.
Sure.
One of the things that has become apparent to me is that the views that are being expressed now generally aren't everyone's views. And so in addition to taking my rest, I have also chosen to learn how to be silent in some situations, because I believe that people will show you who they really are. And I've had some people already show me who they are, especially in this last week, but certainly over the last several months. And then I have other people that I consider to be good friends of mine who are not Black, you know, white people, white women in particular, who have picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, I know the news cycle is tough this week. How are you doing? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? I know I can't understand. One woman in particular said to me, I know I don't have the ability to understand exactly how you feel, but I just want to let you know that I'm here. And so I am stepping back a little bit, getting a little quiet, and just allowing people to show me who they are. And that is very informative because it helps me understand how I need to show up in certain situations. And that's been incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah, I think as we step back into the cause of it all, I think we also need to ask the question, like, what is your why? So before we link arms, are you in this because this is a fun networking opportunity, or do you actually want to fulfill the mission? And I think as we really kind of deepen our strategies, it's that part, but it's also, we need to increase our numbers. I mean, how many young people, even educationally speaking, there are 6th graders out there who are reading at a 2nd grade level. We have to be able to address these issues because these are the people who will be hopefully voters. Hopefully, we don't know what will happen, especially now that he said you guys won't ever have to vote again. I believe him. So I think that we need to try and really come up with new ways to engage younger generations so they care about this to the same extent that our ancestors did.
But I think that they are going to care because when the cutbacks actually start showing up, right now we have the rhetoric. In the next 18 months, we will see the budget cuts and the reality of how that is going to trickle down in our community, and it's going to be felt. So I think that this is probably a good time to rest, to strategize, to think about what's coming, because the tsunami is coming.
You are right. It's going to be very interesting to see where the blame goes, though. I have a feeling it won't be because of the administrative decisions that are taking place today, that the blame will go someplace else.
Yeah, but I would also say that as a community, we need to understand that it is going to be our responsibility to educate our children and to make sure that we send them out in the world armed with the knowledge that they need to know. And I'm not ashamed to say, I have a young daughter. She's in her early 20s. She is not thinking about having children anytime soon, but I have already purchased the workbooks and all of the materials that I will use to educate my own grandchildren. Yes, I'm ready. And I'm probably 10 or 15 years out from that. But just as you said, it will be interesting to see where the blame falls. But at the end of the day, we have to be prepared and armed to take care of our community and the children within that community, starting with their educational foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. How are we feeling going forward? Are we hopeful?
Always. I mean, why not be hopeful? But I mean, genuinely, why not be? I mean, why go out into a world and tell yourself no before you let somebody else tell you no? Why? It's nothing to have some hope. So I think that the answer is always have hope, keep faith, but be realistic when the time comes, and be able to read the room and stay silent in some cases if you need to. Protect yourself, but always have some hope.
I don't think we have a choice, but I think for me, that choice gets rooted right back to my spirituality. And I mean, you call it hope, it's really faith and practice faith that will help keep me grounded and guided, because I know I will be knocked down over and over and over again, and it has to be my faith that carries me through.
Amen.
I heard a sermon yesterday, and the pastor actually said, you know, we're all here because we have faith, but I'm looking for some people who have some hope. He actually said that. So, I mean, you know, for me, I don't know that I'm necessarily there yet, but I'll get there. And I believe Tori's right. You know, why go out into the world telling yourself no and giving someone else the opportunity to tell you the same? So I agree with you. I mean, it's still a little hard. I don't know if you heard the collective sigh.
I did.
When you said, oh, absolutely, I'll have hope. The rest of us sighed, but you know, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And I also feel like hope and faith culturally is just a dynamic of who we are, especially if you look at it from a spiritual front. That's really all we've known. Even when a time when we were enslaved, people still clung to hope and faith that they would. How dare you have the audacity of hope?
That's right.
And the faith to believe that in this instance, when you are an enslaved person, that you are going to make it through this. So I do appreciate your point, Tori, to say absolutely we should have. That's where we come from. And so when you were talking about maybe what lies ahead, we've been used to being resilient. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I want to see some other folks feel what it feels like to have to pull yourself through, because we know how to band together and pull our resources and do that. But baby, you don't. You think the sky is falling and it is the end of the world. We know that it's not. And maybe this is based on that hope and that faith. But to watch some folks say, oh, this is just terrible, and like, baby, this is what you call a problem. And what some people are experiencing now is exactly that. And shamefully, I kind of enjoy seeing that. So.
My favorite line that I keep hearing is, "Oh, we didn't think he meant us."
Right. It's like, who did you think us was?
Yeah.
Wow, and this is why we have Tori among us, right? To help us in this and bring us back on the high note. And I remember growing up, there was a song sang in the church that said, "This joy that I have,
the world didn't give it to me,
and the world can't take it away." And I hope that as we continue to go into this next season and we think about carrying ourselves over, we remember that this joy that we have, the world didn't give it, so the world can't take it away. Thank you, ladies, so much for being around the table with us today. It was such a lovely conversation with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tori.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman.
And I'm Gregory Smith.
On the next Petty and Profound, we're examining how the recent award season exposed hidden truths about the hidden war for teenage boys' minds.
We'll break down how celebrating female empowerment and ignoring male radicalization isn't just ironic, it's dangerous.
Tune in Wednesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app.
Elevated conversations and storytelling, experience the power of community television.
On the next episode of Chicago Newsroom 2.0, host Andy Zopp and guest co-host Deborah Witzberg examine the latest developments on the government shutdown and federal troop deployment in Chicago. Plus, exploring how art and activism intersect through comics, theater, and Chicago's creative economy. Tune in Thursday, October 16th at 7 p.m. Watch it on CAN TV 19, cantv.org, or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Right now, funding cuts and cord cutting threaten the future of local media. But Chicago cannot afford to lose its only platform where every voice is heard. Since 1983, CAN TV has given everyday Chicagoans unfiltered access to tell their stories, hold leaders accountable, and keep democracy alive at the local level. But we simply cannot continue without your help. Consider making a financial gift today. Because if we lose local voices, we lose Chicago.
This month's conversation reminded us that rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. For Black women who turned out in overwhelming numbers during the 2024 election and who so often carry the weight of family, community, and democracy itself, rest is not just self-care, it's survival and it's power. As we close, let's hold on to this truth. When Black women take their rest, they are not stepping away from the fight. We're simply preparing for what lies ahead. Our healing is our collective healing. Our restoration is our future. That's our time for this month, but fear not. The sisters and I will be back next month to the table for another hour of conversation and also community. Thank you for making space for KNTV and Sisters Talk in your day. I'm your host, Watis Gathings. Until next time, protect your peace and remember that rest is resistance.